All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mogul Marathon Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Yannick Cudjoe-Virgil, and I'm very, very excited for our guest today. Our guest today is Jacques Bazinet. Now, Jacques is the president and chief operating officer of Talos Holdings based in Arizona. He specializes in multifamily land acquisitions, entitlements, construction management, and other facets of business development and leadership. And Jacques is a results-focused executive leader with an extensive amount of experience delivering delivering exceptional business results and ROI within high-profile dynamic organizations. Jacques, thanks so much for being a guest on our show today.
Yeah, Nick, it's a total pleasure. I guess my history is a little bit of a tongue twister. I guess we should just call me Jacques.
Well, I'm sure people are really going to get familiar with you today. Before we jump into your expertise in the world of real estate development, give us, a quick backstory on who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll try to be real brief, not very difficult. As a child, I had significant learning disabilities. I had candida, dyslexia, hyperactivity, couldn't read or write when I was 12. So everybody's wondering if I was ever going to make it. And then my father was in hospitality, hotels, restaurants, banquet facilities. So I spent a lot of time with him learning operations. And then when I was in my late 20s, I realized that, I can't do hospitality because I want to be a dad. And I find that hospitality was not creating a venue for fatherhood because you work 7 days a week and holidays, weekends, you get sick, you take 3 days off because you were sick, and you take an extra day off because you just got so much work to do. And then you go back to work for another 3-4 months until you get sick again. So I wanted to leave that. So I went into training and development. I met Stephen R. Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that was just a total blessing, just humbling. I ultimately became the director of the office of Stephen R. Covey, spent a few decades there. And then while I was in training and development, I started investing in multifamily real estate. And every year, my investments, did well. I was blessed. And after a while, I'm like, well, Franklin Covey, at a certain point, we had, 1,600 employees. I would spend, the afternoon with HR talking about, situations, issues, concerns, grievances. My investments in multifamily would always generate more EBITDA than the work I was doing in training and development. We had, major brain damage. So I said, well, why wouldn't I just leave training and development and spend full time in real estate? And I made the full time shift about 8 years ago, and we've done quite well since then. I think that Talos has achieved things that it never achieved before in his 30-year history in the last 8 to 9 years. So it's been great. John McWilliams, the founder, he's a visionary. He's just, people want to hang out with him just because he's so brilliant, and I'm blessed to be his partner. And we started doing multifamily, and I just have a deep passion and desire to help people. It's not something that I work at. It's just me. I don't work at it. I just love doing it. So when we started full time, we became the only multifamily developer that I know of that offers training and coaching as an amenity on site. So as you sign a lease with us, we give you a blank check. And on that blank check, we want you to write what your life goal is this year, what you want to accomplish. And you might have just gotten married. I don't know if you know people, Yannick, that are getting married soon, but I'm sure Danielle is aware that you're getting married soon. Nonetheless, you might have just gotten married, or you might have married into a family where there's existing kids, so you're going to be a father to blended children, or you might want to improve your career, or you want to make more money, or you might be like a guy in one of our properties in Fort Worth who wants to get over his fear of water and learn to swim. So we don't care what the goal is, just tell us what it is, and then we assign a life coach to you, and then during the year that you're living on our property, we will help you accomplish that goal through our life coaching program. And our life coaches also run our Wednesday night events, our Friday events, our Saturday events, and that really creates a community. So you're not having an event that's sponsored by a sales agent that's looking to get a few pictures on on Facebook to get, traction for the property. You're having an event that's sponsored by somebody who's, curated content just for the people that are attending, and making it very impactful. So we build communities of people that are working on lifelong learning and trying to become better people. So in a nutshell, that's how we got to where we're at.
No, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic story, in particular with your affinity for just helping people. I think there's so much bad, rep when it comes to real estate and developers and investors, and a lot of people who are not in the industry think that, oh, we're just out for the money. But you have a different profile, right? You actually care about your community. You want to help people, ascend in life, and it's just a different touch that you really don't see. Um, a real estate developer to have, right? Was it something that was instilled in you as a child? Like, where did that come from?
I
Um,
think that growing up in the service industry, my father opened up several McDonald's restaurants with Ray Kroc in Eastern Canada. I mean, I guess the rest of the country was serving hamburgers and Coke, and Quebec was hot dogs and Pepsi. So Ray tapped my father on the shoulder and said, "Hey, can you help me develop in Quebec?" So he went from restaurant opening to restaurant opening. So at 12, I couldn't read or write. I had significant learning disabilities, but I would go from restaurant opening to restaurant opening and serve people. And I think that kind of is where it all started for me, to have a service mentality and just a real passion to anticipate and serve people's needs.
that's amazing. So I want to dive into your background and how you transition into the world of real estate, from training and development to real estate development. That seems like a very stark difference in terms of just your aptitude of knowledge in those different spaces, and maybe just the networks as well that would help you do your developments. So how were you able to make that transition? Did you like find a mentor? Was your partner kind of like the leader? Did he have all the experience? I'd love to know, like, how did you make that shift to go full time into
Yeah.
development?
So first of all of my investments were with Talos Holdings, and that's my best friend John McWilliams, who's the founder of Talos, who's a self-made individual who started Talos on his own just because he had a passion and desire to do it. So I was fortunate to be his friend, and I was fortunate to have him invite me to be his partner. So that, without that wouldn't have happened. However, I would say that, when I was working with Stephen, we'd spend the week, we'd meet with 4 to 5 Fortune 100 companies a week, and we'd help them with their issues, and we'd find out that really, in the end, the most powerful way to make progress is to be a seeker. When there's a problem that occurs, if you think you know the answer, that might impede you from actually finding what's really going to work. So if you're reducing gun violence in Aurora, Illinois, or if you're reducing spousal abuse in Jacksonville, Florida, if you're helping the military reduce gun violence and divorce and suicide post deployment, you got to attack these issues not knowing the answer. And you got to be fine with that. You got to say, hey, we're just going to get a whole bunch of people in the room, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and figure it out. And it's getting to the front lines and getting to the people who have the best understanding of it, that we're going to solve this problem. It's not by coming to the table thinking that you know it. And when you bring that methodology to any organization, be it a marriage, a family, or working with the city, or working with your architect, or working with investors, or working with a bank, it works. So we have a project in Mesa, Arizona. Mesa, I don't know why, but they're known as a place that is very difficult to get multifamily entitlements. And we rolled up our sleeves and met with them, and actually somebody at the city, a very senior person at the city, during our first meeting said, I have one role and one role only, and that's to make sure that no multifamily gets approved in Mesa. I was like, okay, that sounds good. I mean, it sounds like we're going to have some fun here. And I said, well, why? Help me understand why. Too big, too much people, poor design. Well, great. I said, well, what would you design? I mean, what would you build if it was you, and it's your city? So what would you see? And she goes, well, I'd like something real urban and good density. I'd like some height. We have beautiful mountains. I'd like to have some sky decks. I'd like to have, tuck under garages. And you know what? I said, I have an architect. If you want, tell me what you're thinking, and I could start designing it, and I can come back and see if this is what you're thinking. So we did. Over a period of 2 months, we designed what she was thinking. And I said, it's funny, my architect, as we were working to get this done, was saying, this will never get approved. It's too high. The parking density is too tight. These tuck under garages are going to cause some fire lane issues. And I said, let's just give her what she wants. Let's build it, at least on paper. And we did. And over a period of 2-3 months, she said, "Yeah, this is it. This is fantastic. This is exactly what I would build." I said, "Great." I said, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "I'd build it. I would get the equity, and I'd get the debt, and I'd get the general contractor, and the civil engineer, and the interior designer, and the landscaper. Everything you need, I have. So if you want to build this, I could do it." She goes, "Well, let's do it." I said, "Well, the first thing we're going to have to do is get it permitted, and this will never get through permits." She said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, the height and the sky decks and the parking density." She goes, "Well, let's do it." So we rolled up our sleeves, and in a period of 2.5-3 months, we got it all approved. So we are building the first true e-urban multifamily project in Mesa, Arizona right now, called the One at Mountain Vista. But that comes from, true collaboration. That comes from not knowing the answer when you sit at the table, and to really, bring people's ideas. We did the same thing in Avondale. Avondale right now has a moratorium on zoning for multifamily. And we did the same thing. We went to see the city, and the issue was a little different there. There at the time, there was so many people going for entitlements that they couldn't, just from a pace perspective, they couldn't handle the demand. And I met with the city manager, and I said, "How do you do it? How could you, how do you manage all this stuff? And how can I help? I'm noticing that other cities are taking your staff, and it's hard, and you're dealing with a lot of work. And as a developer, how can I help you?" And he says, "It's just, if you could help us, make sure that your plans come in this way and electronically, and can you layer them, and can you do?" So we great. I'd love to do that. I said, but I said, it must be difficult for you, because there's a lot of people who are coming in for entitlements that aren't planning on building the project. They're just coming in for entitlements to increase the value of the land. And then they put it in the market, and then it might or might not sell, and the developer who buys it might or might not build what they, said they were going to build. So how do you differentiate, people who are coming in from entitlements for people that are, trying to play a land bank game, to people that are actually going to build? He goes, "Well, I never thought of that." He says, "We should find a way to do that." I said, "Well, let me help you. Let's figure it out." And we did. And lo and behold, we got our approvals and entitlements in the city of Avondale in 4.5-5 months, which is half the time of what it would take another developer to do it. And everybody asks us how we do it, and I say, just have empathy. Just serve those around you, and they'll have a better appetite to serve you. A lot of developers always build the same thing. So they'll come to a city and they'll say, "This is our cookie. Here's what we want. Here's our plans. Here are elevations." And then they'll start fighting with the city to get their plans approved. I found that has very little reward to, if in our world, speed to market is what's important. So if I can get a new plan approved in 4.5-5 months, or spend 12 months to get my existing plans approved, I'd much rather get a new plan approved and get everybody engaged. And if you look at our portfolio of product, I actually think it looks nicer too. I think every city has idiosyncrasies, and you make things that belong to that community. So.
Yeah, that's super smart. I think that's one of the things that I think newer investors really need to pay attention to and really need to understand that there's going to be red tape in any market that you're coming into, especially when you're developing anything, quite frankly, right? But it's important to really focus on serving the market and serving the people, right? And not just coming into a market and you're stubborn, you want to do everything by yourself, you have your own plans, you want to do your own thing, but that most of the time isn't necessarily how things go about, right? Before we dive into that a little bit more, I want to jump back to what you were saying originally about seeking the knowledge, right? How does one seek that knowledge in a space where there's so much false information as to what knowledge you should be seeking for you to actually get to the end goal? Like talk about that a little bit. I think I've heard you on separate podcast, expound on that in a way that is somewhat of like a 50% rule that you have by chance. Can you talk about that in detail?
Well, you must have listened to a podcast that was recorded by 5-6 years ago, pre-COVID, because that rule's been updated. But yeah, we find that we used to find that 50% of what we hear is not true, and that's not because people are lying. It's because they're ignorant, or they're spinners, or they're promoters, or they're misinformed, or they're incompetent. And some people are lying. So in the end, 50% of what you hear is not true. But what we found post-COVID is the weirdest time to be doing business. We now call it the 98% rule. So we're really looking for 2% of truth. And once you find it, it's empowering. You make great progress once you know truth. And once you know truth, you're able to distinguish, truth from falsehood as well. And you get it in people. You could spend time with someone. You could say, hey, this guy, a great individual and great potential, but I wouldn't do business with him today because he doesn't have the experience that we need to get it done. I mean, it's so interesting when you ask somebody a question in any walk of life. Simple is helpful. Someone who answers a question with, my gosh, like a 3-page dissertation. It's like, okay, great. This is somebody who, might need to hear themselves speak, or might need to, but somebody who just says, yeah, here's what's up. I mean, I was up at a property just a couple of weeks ago. It was rather interesting. We were putting up, we're exploring with alternative energy. So we're putting up windmills and solar and batteries and generators and stuff. And I had a local excavator up there. His name is Kevin. Love the guy. And we had a windmill expert who had brought this windmill in. And the windmill has to go on top of the hill, and we're renting the excavator from Kevin to do it. And these high-tech engineers are all at the bottom of the hill trying to figure out, how are we going to get the truck up there and get the track hoe up there? And does the track hoe go up first, or do we send the truck up? Do we send the truck up straight, or do we back the truck up? And how do we do it all? They're all kind of working it all through. And I'm just watching Kevin, to assess the whole situation. And when they're all done, and he's respectful, he's listening to them, and he's listening to all the strategies. And they finally ask him, they say, Kevin, we're thinking of backing up. We're thinking of setting the backhoe up first, and then backing up the truck, and then you lifting the windmill off the truck, and then we'll pull the truck down, and then you can kind of navigate up there. And Kevin just very calmly looked at them and said, yeah, that's possible. We could do that. But he says another option is we could just pick it up right here on the backhoe, and I could bring it up with the backhoe, and then all we'll have up there is the backhoe and the windmill, and I could just direct it right away without having to move all this stuff around. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer. That would be how it works." And that's how you know that someone's competent. That that's truth. That's how you do it. And it takes you a lot of time to find that 2% of truth, but once you do, it's very much empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. The truth will set you free, as they say all the time. So jumping back to your Arizona deal, you guys are doing developments in Arizona. Is that kind of like your primary market? Like, what's so special about Arizona in particular?
Yeah, so Talos has worked in the southeast and southwestern United States. So we've had projects in Atlanta, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado. We've gone everywhere. There was a time where our number one lead source was B4, HUD B4 loan. So, HUD would call us. We were a HUD preferred developer. And HUD would call us and say, hey, we got a developer that's not going to be able to make it over the finish line. Can you step in? So we'd step in. So we had projects a little everywhere. We're in an interesting time right now. This current cycle was about 3 to 4 years late from our perspective. So we were getting ready for it. We've been through 3 downturns before. So this is not, you make great money during a downturn. So we have, as long as you're willing to roll up your sleeves here, you get the work done. But in this market, you want to be working in a top 5 city in the nation. So you want to be in a top 5 market. And you want to have a AAA location within that market. And you want to be building something inexpensive. So you want to be building Class A, but you don't want to be building a podium or a wrap. You want to be building 3-story, 4-story surface park. So we have, over the last 5 years, developed a pipeline of 7 deals that meet that criteria. We do 2 or 3 deals a year, so we're not very big. So we've built a pipeline to be able to sustain us over the next 3 to 4 years of top 5 market, AAA site, 3-story, 4-story walk-up surface park.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And for our audience that doesn't know why it's so important for you to, well, the difference in the cost between the podium structures versus the 4 stick, 4-story walk up. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit as to, the cost difference and why, the 4-story stick built properties would be a little bit more affordable than, your podium properties from a development cost perspective?
Well, it certainly is more affordable because it's easier to build, and it takes less time. And in this market, you want to be able to go from breaking ground to leasing up within 32 months. So if you are building a podium, you won't make that deadline, and if you're building a wrap, you won't make that deadline. So we want to be in and out real quick and be stabilized in this market in a top 5 market in a AAA location. So that's what gets you through a recession.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to double with this question here. There's a lot of talk in the multifamily space about, when the recession happens, your class A goes to class B and your class B goes to class C, and then all you want to be is in class C, multifamily apartments. I personally don't believe in that, but I'd love to get your take as to why class A in the middle of a recession. We're not technically in a recession by formal definition standards, but um, if we were to jump into some downside within the economy, what's your take on why class A multifamily is an attractive investment to be in?
You know, I believe Class A has the highest revenue renters, the most educated renters, and the ones that have the highest ability to wither a recession. So I would very much appreciate having them in my buildings as we go through a recession. They're more educated, and they have they're engineers, they're doctors, they're airplane pilots. So those sorts of individuals seem to they have a better financial portfolio than people who would be living in a B or C product or a C minus.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that's one of the biggest misleading factors for people that are in the multifamily space or trying to get into the multifamily space is that they think that C class apartments is the best multifamily product to be in. That is the best product that will help you kind of navigate through the cycles. But I think the answer to that question really comes down to the quality of your tenant base, right? If your tenants are they can't pay the rent, if they have bad collections history on your property, if you don't have a high quality tenant base, then you can't get the revenue in, then you can't pay your debt, right? So I think that's probably one of the biggest misleaders in this space. I'm not sure who came up with that, but I appreciate your insight.
Let me share another perspective with you. So in Arizona right now, we've 21 we had a 24% increase in rents, and then in 22 we had a 30% increase in rents. So one might say, well, gosh, rents have gone up by 40, 30, 52% in 2 years. I mean, how could that be? I mean, that's impossible. You can't maintain it. Well, I mean, let's think that through again with the same conversation we've been having about Class A. So in Arizona, historically, when someone pays rent to their apartment, it used to be 24 to 25% of their annual income, so that they would pay towards rent. In other markets like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, they're paying 50% of their salary to rents. So there was room for people who are moving in from California and New York and other areas to Phoenix, which is a huge influx of people in Phoenix. For them, I mean, it was a huge discount for them, and they were ready to pay more, and that's why the rents increased. So then you might say, well, okay, now that rents have increased by 50%, where are you at? Well, during the same period of time in Class A multifamily, because we're increasing the workforce and we're having a more educated workforce in chip plants, in pharmaceutical, salaries increased by 30% in the top tier of individuals in Arizona. So we didn't really move in Class A. Although we had 50% increase in rents in 2 years, the salary of those individuals that are living in those apartments also went up significantly during that period of time, which might not be the case in a C or B property, but it is in an A property. I feel I feel good about Class A, and I've experienced goodness in Class A. So that's the way I see it, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's really at the end of the day who you want to be in your apartments, right? Folks that have the high paying jobs, the ones that have the more stable incomes, as opposed to, a tenant base that has, incomes that are susceptible to economic swings, and, which ultimately impacts your bottom line. And if you can't get the revenue and you can't pay your investors, right? So I think that is something that needs to be, quite frankly, abolished in the multifamily space, of this mindset of, well, as long as I'm in, C class property, I'm investing in C class assets, then, I'll be fine, if things turn. So I really appreciate your insight on that. So as we as you're investing in these developments, what does your capital stack look like? Are you guys, funding it with your own money? Are you raising private capital from retail capital, institutional capital? Maybe walk through the capital stack on, let's say, the Arizona, the Vista deal, the one at Vista, Mountain Vista.
Yeah, so Talos has been very, very fortunate to be a very well capitalized organization. So we own some of our land, and we pay all of our pre-development costs. So by the time you get a project like the one at Mountain Vista ready to close, on your construction loan and the full capital stack, we've probably spent about $1.4 million, of pre-development dollars. So Talos is very well capitalized and able to do that, but we don't see ourselves as a capital partner. We see ourselves as developers. So we usually do a 95-5 structure. So it means that we bring in 5% of the capital, and we have an equity partner bring in 95% of the capital. But we've been doing it for 30 years. So we have a lot of debt that, we've built trust with over the years, so Acor, Peregrine, Baupost, Bank of the Ozarks, the who's who is who we've worked with in the past. So we're able to leverage our products to 83%. So 83% of our projects are usually debt. And then the balance of the 17% is usually equity, 5% of which would come from us, and 95% of which would come from our partners. Now, who do we deal with? We found that to find debt, we can't work with institutions. It feels like institutions find that they are king, and that the developer doesn't really play much of a role, and their structures kind of show it. So if I do a deal with an institution, we find off-market deals. My partner John lives in Arizona, so we plays golf with all the agents. So we paid the one at Mountain Vista. We paid $5 million for that piece of land, and I'm entitled. And we got it entitled with the city of Mesa, and then we got it permitted. We got design review, got all accepted. So we paid $5 million, for that piece of land. And before we put the shovel in the ground and started building it, we were getting offers at $28 million. So an equity partner that comes in and is able to, the day we break ground, have that equity is, pretty happy.
Yeah.
So in Mesa, we have the Quaker Oats family who's working with us there, 95-5. We pay them a pref, and then we split the proceeds 50-50. So that's the kind of structure we want. And an institution won't do that. An institution is going to put you on a waterfall. They are trying to prevent themselves from working with a bad developer by creating a waterfall that kind of they think protects them from that. Well, the best way to not work with a bad developer is to not work with a bad developer. A waterfall is not going to save you. So we work with very large family offices that have a good culture that we're able to be collaborative with. Or we also work with small to mid-sized family offices that have a strong underwriting process, that are able to underwrite your project and are able to deploy capital. And they usually partner with another family office that isn't, as good with underwriting. So they'll bring in maybe 70% of the capital, and they usually pair up with another family office to put in the last 30. But large family offices or mid-sized family offices that have a great culture. Some very large family offices are institutions. I mean, they hire all the staff from the institutions and their underwriters, and they run the same play that an institution would. So we can't work with them. But there are some large family offices that have a great culture that we enjoy working with. Quaker Oats being one of them. So that's usually how our capital stack works. And on the debt, to get to 83%, we could do, ACOR or principal or others. We could do a participatory loan with them and get us to 83. Or we could do, a 55, 60% construction loan, and then bring in a mezz lender to get us from 65 to 83. So that's usually how we structure it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Jacques, this was an amazing conversation. If our audience wants to follow you, what's the best way for our audience to connect with you? Is it through you directly on LinkedIn or your website? What's the best way for them to
I probably check LinkedIn once a week. So if they want to reach out to me, I don't know how many Jacques Bazinets there's out there, but my assumption is there's not many. So you probably find me pretty easy on LinkedIn. And if you do, when you reach out to me on LinkedIn, give me your email address so that, really quickly we could graduate to email, because that's how I communicate better. We also have a website at talosres.com where they can see, our current pipeline and past projects that we've worked with. And we'd love to, help or assist anybody who's in the journey trying to get some projects done. We've gathered some experience over the years, and I don't see it as my own. I see that all the experience that we've gathered is a gift, and I'm here to regift it. So anybody who would need some help, I'd love to assist in any way I can.
Fantastic. Jacques, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. We talked about your background, how you got into real estate development, how you're seeing Class A multifamily, all the things that I think people who are interested in getting into development, or maybe are currently in development, but are also looking for some pointers here and there. I think you provided a ton of value today. So thank you for being a guest on our show. Thank you to all of our listeners out there for tuning in to another episode of the Mogul Marathon Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Let's take action. Be great today. And remember that real estate is a marathon, not a sprint. So run your own race. Thanks again, Jacques.
Much appreciated, Yannick. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your recent engagement. That's exciting news for you.
Thanks so much.